The worn paperback copy of Charlotte's Web felt heavier than it should in Hart Miller's small hands. The corners were soft from years of being held, the spine cracked in 3 places where her mother's fingers had pressed too hard during the sad parts. Hart traced the faded illustration of the spider on the cover, her thumb following the same path it had traced every night for 7 years. 3 weeks. It had been 3 weeks since Mummy stopped reading. 3 weeks since the car ran the red light. 3 weeks since the nice police officer with the sad eyes had knelt down in front of Hart at school and used words like accident and sorry and gone. Hart didn't understand gone. Gone meant you came back. Mummy's keys were still on the hook by the door. Her coffee mug was still in the sink. Her handwriting was still in the margins of this book, little notes like Hart laughed here and read this part twice. She loves it. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Hart sat on the cracked vinyl bench outside Antonelli's, the fancy Italian restaurant on Lexington Avenue. Mrs. Chen, the neighbor who had taken her in, was inside washing dishes. Mrs. Chen worked 3 jobs now that she had an extra mouth to feed. Hart tried to be quiet, tried to be small, tried not to be a burden. But tonight, the words in the book were swimming. Hart could read on her own, Mummy had made sure of that. They had practiced every night, snuggled under the yellow comforter that smelled like lavender and safety. But reading alone wasn't the same. The words didn't sound right in her head. They needed Mummy's voice, the way she did different tones for Wilbur and Charlotte and Templeton the rat. Hart's stomach growled. Mrs. Chen had given her half a sandwich at 4 in the afternoon, but that was hours ago. Hart didn't complain. Mrs. Chen was kind, but she was also tired. Hart heard her crying sometimes on the phone, speaking fast Cantonese to someone, and Hart's name was the only word she recognized. The restaurant door opened. A wave of warm air carried the smell of garlic and fresh bread. Hart's mouth watered. A man stepped out. He wasn't like the other men who came and went from Antonelli's. Those men laughed loud, slapped backs, wore shiny watches. This man moved like a shadow, quiet and controlled. He was tall, maybe the tallest person Hart had ever seen, with dark hair swept back and a face that looked like it was carved from stone. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than every piece of furniture in Mummy's old apartment combined. 2 other men flanked him, big men with earpieces and eyes that never stopped moving. The tall man, the important man, stopped to light a cigarette. The flame from the silver lighter illuminated his face. He had sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes the color of dark chocolate, cold and assessing. He looked like a king. Or maybe a villain from one of Hart's storybooks. The kind who lived in a castle and made people afraid. Hart should have looked away. Mrs. Chen had taught her that. Don't stare. Don't bother. Be invisible. But Hart was 7 years old and desperately lonely, and this man had stopped right in front of her. She clutched Charlotte's Web tighter. Excuse me, sir. Her voice came out smaller than she intended, barely louder than the traffic on the street. The man didn't hear her. He was speaking in low tones to one of the bodyguards, something about a shipment and a problem at the docks. Excuse me, Hart tried again, louder this time. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Sir. The tall man turned. His gaze landed on her, and for a second, his expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, that something so small had dared to speak to him. The bodyguards stepped forward instinctively, creating a barrier between their boss and this unexpected variable. Move along, kid, one of them said gruffly. Mr. Guam is busy. But Hart didn't move. She stood up from the bench, her sneakers scuffed and too small, her coat thin against the November cold. She held out the book like an offering, like a white flag. Please read to me, sir, Hart said. Her voice cracked on the please. Mommy can't anymore. The world seemed to stop. Guillermo Guam, the man who controlled half the shipping routes in New York, who had ordered men killed with a phone call, who had built an empire on fear and precision, went completely still. The cigarette burned forgotten between his fingers. He stared at the child, at her enormous hazel eyes brimming with unshed tears, at the worn book she held out with shaking hands. What? His voice was a low rumble, not unkind, but utterly baffled. Chapter 7. Hart continued, opening the book to a dog-eared page. We stopped here. Mommy was going to read about bad news, but then, her voice broke. Then she went away. And Mrs. Chen doesn't have time. And I tried reading by myself, but it's not the same. The words don't sound right. She looked up at him with a devastating, innocent hope. You look important.
Important people can do things. Can you make the words sound right?
Guillermo's bodyguard, a man named Felix, cleared his throat. Boss, we have the meeting at 10.
We need to.
Shut up, Felix, Guillermo said quietly, never taking his eyes off the child. He crouched down, bringing himself to her level. The expensive fabric of his trousers touched the dirty sidewalk.
He didn't seem to notice. What's your name? He asked.
Hart Miller. She sniffled, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. I'm 7 3/4. Mommy said the 3/4 matter. They do, Guillermo said. He looked at the book in her hands, really looked at it. He saw the worn cover, the margin notes in faded blue ink, the way the child held it like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. He saw himself, suddenly and painfully, at 8 years old, clutching his own mother's rosary after she had been caught in the crossfire of someone else's war. He remembered the way the beads had felt, smooth and warm, the only piece of her he had left.
Where is your mother, Hart? He asked, though he already knew.
He could see it in the red rims of her eyes, in the way her small shoulders curved inward like she was trying to disappear.
She went to heaven, Hart whispered.
3 weeks and 2 days ago.
A red car didn't stop.
The policeman said it was fast, that she didn't hurt. But I think maybe he was lying to make me feel better.
Guillermo's jaw clenched.
The cigarette fell from his fingers, crushed under his polished shoe. And who is taking care of you now?
Mrs. Chen.
She lives next door. She lived next door.
We don't live there anymore because the landlord said we had to leave.
Mrs. Chen washes dishes here.
Hart pointed to the restaurant.
She's nice,
but she cries a lot on the phone. I think she's trying to find someone to take me.
Like a new home.
The bodyguards exchanged glances. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't how Guillermo Guam operated. He didn't stop on sidewalks. He didn't talk to children. He didn't.
Give me the book, Guillermo said, extending his hand. Hart hesitated for only a second before placing Charlotte's Web in his palm. Her fingers lingered on the cover, reluctant to let go of the last piece of her mother. Guillermo stood to his full height, book in hand.
He looked at Felix.
Cancel the meeting.
Boss, it's with the Colombo family. If we don't show.
I said cancel it. Guillermo's voice dropped to that lethal register that made grown men shut up immediately.
Reschedule for tomorrow.
Tell them I had an emergency.
He looked down at Hart. Come inside.
You look half frozen.
Hart blinked up at him.
Inside the restaurant?
Yes. But Mrs. Chen said I have to wait out here.
She said I'm not allowed inside because Mr. Antonelli doesn't like kids near the customers.
Guillermo's expression darkened.
Mr. Antonelli will make an exception.
He turned and walked back toward the restaurant entrance.
Hart scrambled to follow, her 2 small sneakers slapping against the pavement. The bodyguards fell into formation around them, creating a protective shield that Hart didn't understand but felt instinctively. The interior of Antonelli's was warm and golden. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over white tablecloths and gleaming silverware. The air smelled like tomato sauce and fresh basil, so rich and inviting that Hart's empty stomach twisted painfully. The maitre d', a thin man with a sharp nose, looked up from his podium. His professional smile faltered when he saw Guillermo. Mr. Guam, we weren't expecting you back. Private dining room, Guillermo said, cutting him off.
Now.
Of course, right this way. The maitre d's eyes flicked to Hart, taking in her threadbare coat and scuffed shoes. Confusion flickered across his face, but he was smart enough not to ask questions. They were led to a small room at the back of the restaurant, separated from the main dining area by heavy velvet curtains. A single table sat in the center, intimate and quiet.
Guillermo pulled out a chair. Sit, he told Hart.
Hart climbed onto the chair.
Her feet didn't touch the ground.
She folded her hands in her lap, the way Mommy had taught her when they went to nice places.
Not that they went to nice places often.
Usually, it was the diner on the corner, where they split pancakes and pretended it was a feast.
Guillermo sat across from her.
He placed Charlotte's Web on the table between them, then gestured to Felix. Bring food.
Pasta, bread, something a child would eat. And hot chocolate.
I don't have money, Hart said quickly, panic rising in her chest. Mrs. Chen only gave me $3 for emergencies. You're my guest, Guillermo interrupted. Guests don't pay.
Hart relaxed slightly.
She looked at the book, then at the man across from her. Are you really going to read to me? Guillermo picked up the book. He opened it to chapter 7, where a faded yellow sticky note marked the page. He could see a woman's handwriting, Heart's favorite chapter.
She cries every time. I'm going to read to you, Guillermo confirmed.
His voice, usually used for giving orders and instilling fear, softened just slightly. But first, you're going to eat. When was the last time you had a meal?
Heart thought about it. Lunch.
Mrs. Chen made rice. But she only had a little bit, so I said I wasn't that hungry.
She needs it more. She's working hard.
Guillermo's expression didn't change, but something cold and furious flickered in his dark eyes.
He looked at Felix.
Find out everything about Hart Miller. Her mother, the accident, the current living situation. I want a full report by morning. Yes, boss, Felix said, disappearing through the curtain. The food arrived quickly. A plate of spaghetti carbonara, steaming and perfect. A basket of warm bread. A mug of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. Hart stared at it like it was a mirage, something that would vanish if she reached for it. Eat, Guillermo said.
It wasn't a suggestion. Hart picked up the fork. The first bite of pasta was heaven.
She tried to eat slowly, tried to be polite, but hunger won. She devoured the meal with the desperate efficiency of a child who didn't know when the next one would come.
Guillermo watched her in silence. He saw the way her shoulders relaxed as warmth and food filled her belly.
He saw the faint color return to her pale cheeks. And he saw the grief, ever present, lurking behind her eyes. When she finally slowed down, he spoke. Better. Hart nodded, wiping her mouth with a cloth napkin. Thank you, sir.
My name is Guillermo, he said. You can call me that.
Thank you, Mr. Guillermo, Hart corrected herself.
She looked at the book.
Will you read now? Please.
Guillermo picked up Charlotte's Web. He found the marked page and began to read.
His voice was deep and steady, not theatrical like a performer, but genuine. He read about Wilbur the pig and Charlotte the spider, about friendship and sacrifice and the passing of time. Hart listened with her whole body. She leaned forward, her elbows on the table, her chin resting in her hands. When Guillermo reached the part where Charlotte says, "You have been my friend," that in itself is a tremendous thing. Hart's eyes filled with tears. Mommy always cried here too, Hart whispered. She said it was because Charlotte loved Wilbur even though she knew she couldn't stay forever.
Guillermo stopped reading.
He looked at this child, this impossibly small person who had just handed him a book on a sidewalk and asked a monster to make the words sound right.
He thought about the meeting he had cancelled.
A negotiation with the Colombo family over territory disputes. Blood would have been discussed. Threats would have been made. Men's lives would have been decided over glasses of scotch. And here he was, reading about a spider and a pig to a 7-year-old girl who had lost everything.
Why did you ask me? Guillermo said.
There were other people on that sidewalk. Why me? Hart tilted her head, considering.
You looked sad, she said finally.
Like you have a hurt inside that doesn't go away. Mommy used to look like that sometimes, after Daddy left. She said sad people understand each other better. The words landed like a physical blow. Guillermo Guam, who had spent 20 years building walls around himself, who trusted no one, who showed weakness to no one, felt something crack in his chest. This child saw him. Really saw him.
I'm not a good man, Hart, he said quietly.
The things I do, the life I lead, it's not safe.
It's not kind.
But you're reading to me, Hart pointed out with a child's simple logic. Bad people don't read stories. Bad people don't buy dinner for kids they don't know. Some bad people do, Guillermo said. Sometimes bad people do good things for the wrong reasons. Hart frowned, thinking hard. Then she slid off her chair and walked around the table. Before Guillermo could react, she climbed into his lap, tucking herself against his chest like a small bird seeking shelter from a storm. Mommy said everyone has good inside them, Hart said, her voice muffled against his jacket. Even people who forgot. She said sometimes you just have to remind them.
Guillermo sat frozen.
He couldn't remember the last time someone had touched him with affection instead of fear. His hands hovered awkwardly over the child, unsure where to land. Slowly, carefully, he placed one hand on her back. She was so small, so fragile. He could feel her heartbeat through the thin fabric of her coat. Please don't send me away, Hart whispered. Mrs. Chen is going to find a place for me. A group home, maybe. She says they are not bad, but I don't want to go.
I want to stay somewhere that feels like Mommy. Somewhere safe.
The curtain rustled. Felix stepped back into the room. He stopped short, seeing his boss, Guillermo Guam, the man who had once broken a rival's arm for looking at him wrong, holding a small child like she was made of glass.
Boss, Felix said carefully.
I have the preliminary information. Later, Guillermo said, his voice rough. Give us a minute.
Felix nodded and disappeared. Guillermo looked down at Hart.
She had fallen asleep, exhausted from grief and a full stomach and the first moment of comfort she'd had in 3 weeks. Her small hand clutched his lapel, holding on even in sleep.
He had killed men. He had ruined lives.
He had built an empire on violence and fear. And now, sitting in a private dining room of an Italian restaurant, holding a sleeping orphan who had asked him to read a children's book, Guillermo Guam made a decision that would change everything.
He wasn't sending her to a group home.
He wasn't letting her disappear into the system. This child had seen him, the real him, the broken parts he kept hidden, and she hadn't run away. She had climbed into his lap and fallen asleep, trusting him completely. Guillermo shifted carefully, adjusting Hart so her head rested against his shoulder.
He picked up his phone with his free hand and texted Felix. Find Mrs. Chen. Get her details.
I'm taking custody. The response came immediately. Boss, are you sure? Guillermo looked at the child sleeping in his arms. He thought about his empty penthouse, the fortress he had built to keep the world out. He thought about the life he led, dangerous and isolated. And he thought about a little girl on a sidewalk, holding out a book and asking for something as simple and profound as someone to make the words sound right.
I'm sure, he typed. Start the paperwork.
He set the phone down and looked at Charlotte's web, still open on the table. He read the last line on the page silently. It is not often that someone comes along who is a true friend and a good writer. Charlotte was both. Hart stirred slightly, mumbling something in her sleep that sounded like Mommy. I'm here, Guillermo said softly, the words unfamiliar and strange in his mouth.
I've got you, Hart.
You're safe now. Outside the restaurant, New York continued its relentless rhythm.
Deals were made.
Threats were issued.
The machinery of the underworld churned on.
But in a small private dining room, a monster held a child and made a silent promise to the mother who couldn't read to her anymore. The penthouse on the Upper West Side occupies the entire 72nd floor of a building that Guillermo owns through a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. The elevator that opens directly into the living space requires a biometric scan and a 16-digit code that changes every 48 hours. The windows are bulletproof, reinforced with a polymer that can withstand a direct hit from a .50 caliber round. The walls are concrete, not drywall, built to absorb sound and impact.
It is a fortress, a tomb, a monument to solitude.
Guillermo stands in the center of the living room at 2 a.m, still wearing his suit from the restaurant, Hart asleep in his arms. She hasn't woken since the dining room, her small body trusting in a way that makes something uncomfortable twist in his chest. Felix stands near the elevator, holding a tablet. Mrs. Chen is waiting downstairs with the girl's belongings. It's not much, a backpack of clothes, some toys. She's asking to speak with you. Bring her up, Guillermo says. And wake Rosa. Boss, it's 2 a.m. I'm aware of the time, Felix. Guillermo's voice carries that edge of command that makes men move without further question. Wake Rosa. Tell her I need her help with something urgent. Felix nods and disappears into the private quarters at the far end of the penthouse where the live-in housekeeper sleeps.
Guillermo looks down at Hart.
In sleep, her face is peaceful, younger than her 7 years. But he can see the signs of grief in the dark circles under her eyes, the way her small hand clutches his jacket even in unconsciousness, afraid to let go. He carries her to the guest wing, a series of rooms he's never used. The furniture is expensive and sterile, picked by an interior designer who prioritized aesthetics over warmth. He lays Hart on the queen-sized bed, pulling the duvet over her small frame. She looks impossibly tiny in the massive bed, swallowed by luxury that means nothing to a child who just wants her mother back. Rosa appears in the doorway, tying a bathrobe over her nightgown. She's 60 years old, Colombian, with steel gray hair and eyes that have seen too much to be surprised by anything. She's worked for Guillermo for 15 years, managing his household with military efficiency and asking no questions about the blood he occasionally tracks across the marble floors. Dios mío. Rosa breathes, seeing the child. Mr. Guam, what? Her name is Hart Miller, Guillermo says quietly, not taking his eyes off the sleeping girl.
7 years old. Mother died 3 weeks ago in a car accident.
She's been staying with a neighbor who can't keep her. I'm taking custody.
Rosa stares at him.
In 15 years, she has never heard Guillermo mention children, let alone express interest in one.
You're taking custody, she repeats slowly.
Of a child. A 7-year-old child. Yes. Mr. Guam, forgive me, but do you know anything about raising children?
No, Guillermo admits.
That's why I'm paying you triple your current salary starting tonight.
She needs clothes that fit. Toys.
Books. She likes books. This room needs to be less. He gestures at the cold, impersonal space.
Less like a hotel.
More like a home. Rosa looks at Hart, then back at Guillermo.
She sees something in her employer's face that she's never seen before.
Not softness exactly, but a crack in the armor.
A fracture letting light through.
I'll make a list, Rosa says finally. But Mr. Guam, a child needs more than clothes and toys.
She needs stability. Routine.
She needs someone who will be there when she wakes up scared in the night.
I'll be here, Guillermo says.
Your work. I'll be here, he repeats, harder this time.
Whatever needs to change, it changes. She doesn't go into the system.
She doesn't end up in some group home where no one knows her name. She stays with me.
Rosa nods slowly.
There will be questions. Legal questions. Social services doesn't just hand children to, she stops herself. To criminals.
Guillermo finishes. I'm aware. Felix is already working on it.
I have lawyers who specialize in making paperwork cooperative. And I have judges who understand the value of my contributions to their campaigns.
He looks at Rosa. By morning, I want this room transformed.
I want it to feel safe.
Warm.
Like a place a little girl who lost her mother might want to stay. I'll do my best, Rosa promises. Guillermo nods and walks back to the living room where Mrs. Chen is waiting. She's a small woman in her 50s, wearing a food-stained apron over worn clothing. She holds a faded purple backpack with both hands, clutching it like a life preserver. Mr. Guam, Mrs. Chen says, her accent thick.
I don't understand.
Hot, she is. You want to. She struggles with the English, frustration creasing her face. I want to take care of her, Guillermo says simply. You've done everything you could, Mrs. Chen. But you have your own struggles.
I can give Hart stability. Safety.
Everything she needs. Mrs. Chen's eyes fill with tears.
She is good girl.
So good. Her mama, Sarah, she was my friend. She worked 2 jobs, always tired, but she loved Hart so much. When she die, I promise I take care of baby.
But I have nothing. My apartment, so small. My job, it barely pay rent.
I try to find family, but Sarah has no one. Her parents, they died long time ago.
The father, he leave before Hart is born.
There is no one.
She holds out the backpack. This is everything.
Some clothes, too small now.
Her bear, Mr. Buttons. And the book. Always the book. Sarah read to her every night. Every single night. It was their special thing. Guillermo takes the backpack. It weighs almost nothing.
A 7-year-old's entire life reduced to what fits in a child-sized bag. You loved her, Guillermo observes.
Hart.
You love her. Of course, Mrs. Chen says, wiping her eyes.
How could I not?
But love, it doesn't pay for food.
It doesn't make bigger apartment.
It doesn't give her future. She looks at him, searching his face.
You are rich man. Important man.
But Hart, she need more than money.
She needs someone who will hold her when she cry. Someone who will remember her mama with her.
Can you do this? Guillermo thinks about the child asleep in his guest room, the way she had looked at him on the sidewalk with those enormous hazel eyes and asked him to make the words sound right.
I can try, he says.
It's the most honest answer he's given anyone in years. Mrs. Chen studies him for a long moment. Then she nods, as if coming to a decision. Hart, she sees something in you.
She is smart girl, very smart. She see people's hearts.
If she trusts you, then I trust you. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out a small silver locket.
This was Sarah's. Inside is picture of her and Hart. I want Hart to have it when she is ready, when she can look at it without crying. Guillermo takes the locket.
It's cheap, tarnished, But when he opens it, he sees a photo of a young woman with Hart's same hazel eyes, holding a toddler with a gap-toothed smile. The love in the image is palpable, captured in the way the mother holds her daughter, in the joy radiating from both faces. "I'll keep it safe," Guillermo promises. "And Mrs. Chen, if you need anything, money for rent, help with legal status, anything at all, you contact Felix.
You helped Hart when she had no one."
"I don't forget that." Mrs. Chen nods, tears flowing freely now.
"You tell Hart I say goodbye. Tell her Mrs. Chen love her.
"Tell her to be good girl and eat her vegetables and remember her mama always."
"I'll tell her," Guillermo says.
After Mrs. Chen leaves, Guillermo stands alone in his living room, holding a purple backpack and a silver locket, watching the city lights blink through bulletproof windows.
His phone buzzes.
A message from his second-in-command, Mateo, Colombo meeting rescheduled. They are pissed.
What was the emergency?
Guillermo looks toward the guest wing where Hart sleeps.
He types back, "Family matter. I'll explain tomorrow." He doesn't sleep that night.
Instead, he sits in a leather armchair outside Hart's room, Charlotte's Web in his hands, reading ahead so he knows what comes next. So when she wakes up scared and alone in a strange place, he can tell her what happens to Wilbur and Charlotte.
He can make the words sound right.
Morning comes with weak November sunlight filtering through the windows. Hart wakes slowly, blinking at an unfamiliar ceiling. For a blissful half-second, she thinks she's still at home, that Mommy will walk in any moment with pancakes and orange juice.
Then reality crashes back. The accident. Mrs. Chen's apartment. The restaurant. The tall man who read to her.
Hart sits up, looking around. The room is enormous, bigger than her and Mommy's entire apartment.
The bed is so soft she feels like she's floating.
Everything is white and cream and beige, beautiful and pristine and completely sterile.
She doesn't like it.
Hart slides out of bed and pads to the door in her socks. She opens it carefully, peeking out into a hallway that seems to stretch forever. She can hear voices, low, adult conversations that stop when she appears. "Good morning, Pequena," a woman's voice says. Hart turns to see a kind-faced older woman with gray hair approaching.
"I'm Rosa. I work for Mr. Guam."
"You must be Hart."
Hart nods, suddenly shy.
"Where's Mr. Guillermo?"
"He's in his study taking a call," Rosa says gently.
"But he left instructions that you're to have breakfast the moment you wake up."
"Are you hungry?"
Hart's stomach growls an answer. Rosa smiles and extends her hand.
"Come. I made scrambled eggs and toast.
And there's orange juice." The kitchen is massive, all stainless steel and marble countertops. Hart climbs onto a bar stool, her feet dangling. Rosa sets a plate in front of her, and Hart eats slowly, carefully, still not quite believing this is real. "Mr. Guam says you like to read," Rosa says, wiping down the counter.
"He asked me to prepare a list of books to buy for you."
"Do you have favorites besides Charlotte's Web?"
Hart thinks.
"Mommy liked to read me Matilda. And we were going to start Harry Potter, but we didn't."
Her voice trails off.
"We'll get those books," Rosa promises. "And anything else you want." "Why is Mr. Guillermo being so nice to me?"
Hart asks suddenly.
"I don't have any money. Mrs. Chen said nice things always cost money." Rosa pauses, choosing her words carefully.
"Mr. Guam is a complicated man, Hart.
But I've worked for him a long time, and I've never seen him care about someone the way he cared about you last night.
He carried you like you were made of glass.
He sat outside your room all night to make sure you were safe."
Hart's eyes widen.
"All night." "All night," Rosa confirms.
"He's a busy man, an important man. But he made you his priority."
"That tells me something."
The study door opens.
Guillermo emerges, and Hart's breath catches. In daylight, he's even more imposing than she remembers. He's changed into dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looks tired, dark circles under his eyes, but when he sees Hart at the kitchen island, something in his expression softens.
"You're awake," he says. "You sat outside my room all night," Hart blurts out.
"Rosa told me."
Guillermo shoots Rosa a look. She shrugs, unrepentant.
"The child asked." "I wanted to make sure you didn't wake up scared," Guillermo says, walking over. He pulls out the bar stool next to Hart and sits, which feels absurd, this powerful man perching on a kitchen stool like a regular person.
"This is a new place.
I thought you might need reassurance."
"I did wake up scared," Hart admits. But then Rosa was nice.
And there's orange juice. The small victories, Guillermo murmurs.
He looks at Rosa.
The list?
Rosa pulls out her phone.
I need to take Hart shopping today. Clothes, shoes, toiletries.
The things in her backpack are too small and worn.
I also think she needs books, toys, maybe some things to make her room feel more personal. Photos, decorations. Take my card, Guillermo says, pulling out a black credit card and sliding it across the counter. Get whatever she needs. Whatever she wants. I don't need lots of stuff, Hart says quickly. Mommy always said we should only buy what we need, not what we want. Guillermo looks at her, and Hart sees something shift in his dark eyes. Your mother was teaching you to be practical because she didn't have a choice.
But Hart, you're here now. And here, you can have both what you need and what you want.
Within reason, he adds, seeing Rosa's raised eyebrow. What's within reason?
Hart asks. No ponies, Guillermo says.
I wasn't going to ask for a pony, Hart says, but she's smiling now, a real smile that transforms her grief-shadowed face. Ponies are too big for apartments.
Smart girl, Guillermo says.
He hesitates, then reaches out and gently adjusts a strand of hair that's fallen into her face. The gesture is careful, uncertain, as if he's afraid she'll shatter under his touch. Hart, we need to talk about what happens next.
The smile fades.
Am I going to a group home?
No, Guillermo says firmly.
You're staying here.
With me.
If that's what you want.
Hart stares at him.
You mean, forever? I mean for as long as you need a home, Guillermo clarifies.
But there will be some adjustments.
Lawyers need to get involved.
Social workers will want to meet you, make sure you're safe and cared for.
There will be questions. What kind of questions?
About me, Guillermo says. About whether I'm a suitable guardian.
About my work, my life, my ability to take care of a child. Hart tilts her head, studying him with that unnerving perception. Are you suitable? Honestly?
I don't know,
Guillermo admits.
I've never done this before.
I don't know how to braid hair or help with homework or deal with nightmares. But I'm very good at keeping people safe, Hart. And I'm very good at making sure that what's mine stays protected.
Am I yours? Hart asks.
The question hangs in the air. Rosa has gone very still, watching the exchange. If you want to be, Guillermo says carefully. I'm not trying to replace your mother. No one could. But I can give you stability, safety, a future. I can make sure you never have to worry about where your next meal comes from or whether you'll have a place to sleep.
And I can read to you, he adds quietly.
Every night, if that's what you need. Hart considers this with the seriousness of a judge weighing evidence. Then she slides off her stool and walks over to where Guillermo sits. She climbs into his lap, settling against his chest the same way she did last night.
Okay, she says simply.
I want to stay. Guillermo's arms come around her, protective and sure. He looks at Rosa over Hart's head, and Rosa sees something that stuns her, actual fear. The man who controls half of New York shipping operations, who has stared down rival bosses and federal prosecutors, is terrified of failing this 7-year-old child.
Rosa mouths, "You'll be fine." Guillermo isn't sure he believes her.
The next 3 days are a crash course in parenthood for a man wholly unprepared for the role. Rosa becomes Guillermo's lifeline, teaching him the basics. Hart needs 3 meals a day and 2 snacks. She needs a bedtime routine, bath, pajamas, teeth, story. She needs consistency, patience, and gentle redirection when she gets overwhelmed by grief. Guillermo attacks the challenge the way he attacks everything, with total commitment and zero tolerance for failure.
He clears his schedule. Meetings are rescheduled or conducted from home.
He installs Rosa in the second guest room so she's available around the clock. He hires a tutor to handle Hart's schooling privately. Public school is out of the question until he's certain she's secure. Too many variables, too many potential vulnerabilities. Felix compiles a dossier on Sarah Miller, Hart's mother.
The file is thin and tragic.
Sarah was 28 when she died, working 2 minimum-wage jobs to support herself and Hart. No family, no life insurance, no safety net. The father, a man named Derek Strand, signed away his parental rights before Hart was born and hasn't been seen since. Sarah's death was ruled accidental, the driver of the red car a drunk 22-year-old who's now serving time for vehicular manslaughter.
It's all depressingly ordinary.
A good woman ground down by an indifferent system, working herself to exhaustion, killed by someone else's recklessness. Guillermo reads the file in his study late at night while Hart sleeps, and he feels a rage so pure and cold it surprises him.
Sarah Miller should have lived.
Hart should be asleep in her own bed right now, her mother reading Charlotte's Web instead of a mafia boss who doesn't know the first thing about raising children. But Sarah is dead, and Hart is here, and Guillermo will be damned if he lets this child slip through the cracks the way her mother did.
On the fourth day, the social worker arrives.
Her name is Patricia Gonzalez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a briefcase and a skeptical expression. Felix escorts her up to the penthouse, and Guillermo meets her in the living room, Hart at his side. Hart is wearing a new dress, soft pink cotton that Rosa picked out, and her hair is brushed and tied back with a ribbon. She looks healthy, well-fed, cared for.
But Guillermo knows that's not enough. Social services doesn't just check boxes.
They look for red flags.
And Guillermo Guam is a walking red flag parade.
Mr. Guam, Patricia says, shaking his hand with a professional grip.
Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. And you must be Hart.
Hart nods, suddenly shy. She moves closer to Guillermo, her hand finding his.
Patricia notices. She notices everything.
They sit in the living room, Guillermo on the sofa, Hart pressed against his side, Patricia in the armchair across from them.
She pulls out a tablet and a voice recorder. I'm going to ask some questions, Patricia says gently.
Both of you.
The goal is to make sure Hart is in a safe, stable environment.
Is that okay?
Hart nods.
Guillermo says, ask whatever you need. Patricia starts with the basics.
When did they meet? How did Guillermo come to take custody?
What are his plans for Hart's care, education, emotional well-being?
Guillermo answers truthfully, mostly. He met Hart outside a restaurant. She was alone and asked him to read to her because her mother had died.
He made arrangements with Mrs. Chen and brought Hart home. He's hired private tutors and a live-in housekeeper. He's committed to providing stability and care. What he doesn't mention is the specifics of his business. The shipping routes that carry more than legal cargo. The network of contacts that includes enforcers, money launderers, and politicians on his payroll. Patricia doesn't ask directly, but her questions dance around the edges. What is your occupation, Mr. Guam?
I own a logistics company. Import-export.
Shipping primarily, but also warehousing and freight management. And your income is sufficient to support a child. More than sufficient.
Patricia makes notes. Then she turns to Hart.
Sweetie, can you tell me how you're feeling? About being here?
Hart looks at Guillermo, then back at Patricia. I'm sad, she says honestly.
I miss my mommy.
But Mr. Guillermo is nice. He reads to me every night. And Rosa makes good food.
And I have my own room with books. Do you feel safe here?
Yes.
Has Mr. Guam or anyone in this household ever hurt you or made you uncomfortable?
No, Hart says, frowning. Mr. Guillermo is careful with me.
He acts like I might break.
Patricia's lips twitch.
And do you want to stay here?
Hart nods emphatically.
I don't want to go to a group home.
I want to stay with Mr. Guillermo.
He promised he'd keep me safe.
Patricia looks at Guillermo.
That's a big promise.
It's one I intend to keep, Guillermo says.
His voice carries absolute conviction. The interview continues for another 30 minutes. Patricia wants to see Hart's room, the kitchen, the general living conditions. She takes photos, makes more notes.
Finally, she sits back down across from Guillermo. Mr. Guam, I'll be honest with you. Your situation is unusual.
You're a single man with no prior experience raising children. Your background check flags several concerns, nothing disqualifying, but enough to warrant scrutiny. However, she looks at Hart, who's now curled up on the sofa with Mr. Buttons, the stuffed bear from her backpack. That child looks happy, Patricia says quietly. Or as happy as a grieving 7-year-old can be. She's clean, well-fed, and clearly bonded to you. Those factors matter. I'm recommending provisional custody with regular check-ins. Every 2 weeks for the first month, then monthly after that. If Hart continues to thrive, we'll move toward permanent guardianship. Guillermo feels tension he didn't know he was holding release from his shoulders.
Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Patricia warns.
I'll be watching closely, Mr. Guam.
Hart has been through trauma.
She needs consistency, therapy, and a guardian who puts her needs first. If I see any signs that she's not thriving, I'll remove her immediately.
Understood, Guillermo says. Patricia stands, collecting her things. One more thing. Hart should see a child psychologist. Grief counseling. She's too composed for a child who lost her mother 3 weeks ago.
That worries me.
I'll arrange it, Guillermo promises.
After Patricia leaves, Hart climbs back into Guillermo's lap. Is she going to take me away?
No, Guillermo says firmly. You're staying. But we have to do things right. Follow the rules. That means you'll talk to a doctor about your feelings. Someone who can help with the sad. Will you be there? Hart asks. If you want me to be. I do, Hart says. She rests her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat.
Mr. Guillermo.
Yes.
Thank you for letting me stay.
Guillermo closes his eyes, resting his chin on top of her head.
Thank you for trusting me, Hart. That night, he reads 3 chapters of Charlotte's Web instead of 1, because Hart asks for more and Guillermo can't find a reason to say no. The following week, Guillermo takes Hart to see Dr. Evelyn Park, a child psychologist who comes highly recommended and, more importantly, who understands the value of discretion. Her office is warm and colorful, filled with toys and art supplies, designed to put children at ease.
Hart is nervous. She clutches Guillermo's hand as they walk in.
Dr. Park is a small Asian woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a calm demeanor.
Hi, Hart, she says gently.
I'm Dr. Park,
but you can call me Evelyn if you'd like. Would it be okay if we talk for a little while? Hart looks at Guillermo. He nods encouragingly.
I'll be right outside if you need me.
You're not staying. Hart's grip tightens. I'll stay if you want, Guillermo says. But Dr. Park might want to talk to you alone. That's normal. It's safe.
Hart wavers, then releases his hand.
Okay, but you'll be right outside.
Right outside, Guillermo promises. He sits in the waiting room, checking his phone. There are messages from Mateo about a shipment delayed in Newark. Messages from his lawyer about the custody paperwork. A terse message from Ronaldo Colombo. We need to discuss your new priorities.
Guillermo deletes that one. The Colombos can wait.
30 minutes later, Dr. Park emerges. Mr. Guam, could you join us for a moment?
He follows her back into the office.
Hart is sitting on a beanbag chair, coloring.
She looks calmer than she did going in.
Hart and I had a good talk, Dr. Park says.
She's a very articulate child. She understands that her mother died and isn't coming back.
But she's also carrying a lot of guilt.
Guillermo frowns.
Guilt about what? She thinks if she'd been a better daughter, gotten better grades, complained less about money, her mother wouldn't have been so stressed.
Wouldn't have been working so much.
Wouldn't have been on that road when the drunk driver ran the light.
Guillermo's chest tightens painfully.
He looks at Hart, who's focused intently on coloring, pretending not to listen. That's not how it works, Guillermo says, his voice rough. Hart, look at me. Hart sets down the crayon and looks up, her eyes enormous and shimmering. Your mother's death was not your fault, Guillermo says, kneeling beside the beanbag chair.
Not even a little bit.
Bad things happen to good people all the time, and it's not fair, and it's not right, but it's not because of anything you did or didn't do. Do you understand?
Hart's lower lip trembles.
But if I hadn't needed new shoes, she would have been somewhere else in the city, Guillermo interrupts gently. And the drunk driver would have hit someone else's mother. Or someone's father, or sister, or friend. The guilt belongs to the man who got behind the wheel drunk. Not to you.
Never to you. A tear slides down Hart's cheek.
I miss her.
I know, Guillermo says.
He opens his arms, and Hart launches herself at him, sobbing into his shoulder. He holds her, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapped securely around her small frame. Dr. Park watches, making notes. Hart, she says softly, would it be okay if Mr. Guam and I talked outside for just a minute?
Hart nods, wiping her eyes.
Guillermo hands her a tissue, waits until she's settled back with her coloring, then follows Dr. Park into the hallway. She's experiencing complicated grief, Dr. Park says quietly.
Which is normal given the circumstances. But she's also showing signs of attachment anxiety.
She's terrified of losing you the way she lost her mother.
I'm not going anywhere, Guillermo says. You need to prove that, Dr. Park says.
Not with words, but with consistency.
Show up every day. Keep your promises. Let her see that you're permanent.
And Mr. Guam, you need to understand something.
She looks him directly in the eye.
Hart chose you. In her grief, in her fear, she picked you out of a crowd and asked for help. Children have extraordinary instincts about people.
She saw something in you that made her feel safe.
Don't prove her wrong.
Guillermo thinks about the life he leads.
The violence, the danger, the constant threat. What if I can't protect her from everything?
No parent can, Dr. Park says simply. But you can love her. You can be present.
You can give her the tools to process her grief and grow into a healthy adult. That's what she needs.
Guillermo nods slowly.
How often should she see you?
Once a week for now.
We'll adjust as needed. They schedule the appointments. When Guillermo and Hart leave the office, she slips her hand into his without being asked. Did I do okay?
Hart asks.
You did perfect, Guillermo says. I'm proud of you.
Hart beams.
It's the first genuine smile he's seen from her since that initial night at the restaurant. They are walking to the car when Guillermo's phone rings. It's Felix, and his voice is tight with urgency. Boss, we have a problem. Guillermo stops, instinctively pulling Hart closer. What kind of problem? The Volkov brothers.
They know about the girl. Guillermo's blood runs cold. How? Someone talked.
Maybe Mrs. Chen, maybe one of the staff at Antonelli's. Word is spreading that you've taken in a kid.
Volkov sees it as weakness.
He's making noise about leverage.
Guillermo's jaw clenches.
Viktor Volkov runs a rival operation, smuggling contraband through the same port facilities Guillermo controls. They've been in a cold war for months, each waiting for the other to make a mistake. And now Guillermo has handed him ammunition.
Where are you?
Felix asks. Leaving the psychologist's office on East 73rd.
Get to the car. Marco is already there.
I'm sending 2 more units to shadow you back to the tower.
Guillermo ends the call.
He looks down at Hart, who's watching him with worried eyes.
Is something wrong? She asks.
Nothing for you to worry about, Guillermo lies. He lifts her into his arms, ignoring her protest that she's too big to be carried. We're just going to get to the car quickly, okay? Marco, one of Guillermo's most trusted men, is waiting by the black SUV. His hand rests on his hip where Guillermo knows a weapon is holstered.
His eyes scan the street constantly.
Boss, Marco says, opening the rear door. We're clear for now, but Felix wants us mobile. Guillermo slides into the car with Hart still in his arms. She's tense, picking up on the adult's anxiety. Mr. Guillermo, you're scaring me, Hart whispers.
I'm sorry, Guillermo says.
He forces himself to relax, to gentle his voice. There's just some work stuff I need to handle.
But you're safe, Hart.
I promise. No one is going to hurt you. The drive back to the tower is uneventful, but Guillermo's mind is racing. Viktor Volkov is unpredictable, ambitious, and cruel. If he sees Hart as a weakness to exploit, he won't hesitate. Guillermo has spent years building walls to keep his enemies out. Now he has to rebuild those walls around a 7-year-old girl who asked him to read her a bedtime story. When they arrive at the penthouse, Rosa is waiting with hot chocolate and cookies. Hart goes to her gratefully, chattering about the psychologist's office and the toys and the big fish tank in the waiting room. Guillermo heads straight to his study. Felix is already there, along with Mateo and 2 other senior members of Guillermo's organization. Talk, Guillermo orders, closing the door. Volkov sent a message through one of our dock foremen, Mateo says, pulling out his phone and showing a photo of a handwritten note. It says, "Heard you got yourself a little pet. Careful she doesn't get lost." Guillermo stares at the note, rage building hot and vicious in his chest. He's threatening a child.
He's testing you, Felix says.
Seeing if you'll flinch. If you pull resources to protect her, he can move on the waterfront. If you don't, he might actually make a play for leverage. Neither of those things is happening, Guillermo says coldly. Hart stays protected.
The waterfront stays locked down.
We do both. Boss, we're already stretched thin with the Newark expansion, Mateo argues. If Volkov hits us while we're split. Then we hit him first, Guillermo interrupts. I want surveillance on every Volkov property. I want to know where Viktor sleeps, what he eats, who he talks to.
I want eyes on his crew, his suppliers, his distribution network. And I want this penthouse locked down like Fort Knox.
No one gets within 50 feet of this building without being vetted. What about the girl's routine?
Felix asks.
The doctor's appointments, Outings with Rosa.
Armed escort.
Minimum 3 men, rotating shifts. Marco handles logistics.
Guillermo looks at each of them in turn. Hart Miller is family now. And we protect family. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally.
Make sure that message reaches Volkov loud and clear. The men nod, understanding the subtext.
This isn't just business anymore. This is personal.
After they leave, Guillermo sits alone in his study, staring at the photo of Volkov's threat.
He should have anticipated this. Should have known that showing care for anything would paint a target.
But looking at it another way, he didn't have a weakness before Hart.
He had nothing to lose. That made him dangerous, yes, but also hollow. Empty. Now he has something worth protecting. Something that makes him want to build rather than destroy. There's a soft knock on the door.
Come in, Guillermo calls. Hart enters, holding Charlotte's web. Rosa said you're busy, but can we read?
Just one chapter.
Guillermo looks at her, small, hopeful, trusting, and makes a decision.
The world outside can wait an hour. His enemies can scheme and plot.
But right now, in this moment, a little girl needs her story.
Come here, he says, holding out his hand.
Hart runs over, climbing into his lap with the ease of growing familiarity. Guillermo opens the book to their marked page and begins to read, his deep voice filling the quiet study. Outside, 3 floors down, Felix deploys additional security. Marco briefs the overnight team. Mateo reaches out to their contacts in the Volkov organization, probing for intelligence. But in the study, there's only a man and a child and a story about a spider who saves a pig with words. And for that hour, Guillermo Guam isn't a crime boss making tactical decisions. He's simply the person who makes the words sound right. 6 months later. The first day of spring arrives with pale sunlight filtering through the penthouse windows. Hart stands in front of the mirror in her room. No longer the sterile guest room but her room, transformed over months into a space that feels like childhood personified. The walls are painted soft lavender, her favorite color. Bookshelves line one wall, crammed with everything from picture books to chapter books she's growing into. A reading nook occupies the corner, piled with cushions and a blanket that smells like the lavender detergent Rosa uses. On her dresser sits the silver locket Mrs. Chen gave Guillermo. Hart had asked for it 2 months ago, on a day when missing Mommy felt less like drowning and more like a dull ache she could breathe through. Inside, her mother's face smiles back at her, frozen in that moment of perfect happiness. Hart touches it every morning, a ritual that grounds her. She's wearing a new dress, pale blue with white flowers, and her hair is braided the way Rosa taught her to do herself. In 3 days, she turns 8. 8 years old without her mother. The thought still hurts, but differently now. Like a scar instead of an open wound. Hart, breakfast. Rosa calls from the kitchen. Hart bounds out of her room, her footsteps echoing through the penthouse. She's learned the geography of this place, knows which floorboards creak, which rooms catch the morning sun, where Guillermo keeps the good chocolate he pretends he doesn't know she steals. In the kitchen, Guillermo sits at the island with his coffee and tablet, scanning through what Hart now recognizes as work reports. His dress for the office in a charcoal suit, but his tie hangs loose around his neck. He looks up when she enters, and his expression softens in that way it only does for her. "Good morning, Paquina," he says, using Rosa's nickname. It means little one. Hart loves it. "Morning," Hart says, climbing onto her stool. Rosa sets down a plate of French toast, and Hart digs in with enthusiasm. "Are you coming to my school thing today?" The school thing is a small presentation at the private tutoring center where Hart attends classes 3 times a week. She's been working on a project about Charlotte's Web, analyzing themes, creating artwork, writing her own short story inspired by it. It's her way of honoring her mother, of taking something painful and making it beautiful. "I wouldn't miss it," Guillermo says. "What time?" 2 o'clock. Miss Jennifer said families can come. The word families hangs in the air. It's still new, this configuration they've built. Not parent and child exactly, not in the traditional sense. But something. Guardian and ward on paper. Something deeper in practice. "I'll be there," Guillermo promises. "Felix can handle the warehouse inspection." Hart smiles, syrup on her chin. Rosa wipes it off with a napkin, clucking her tongue affectionately. The custody process had taken 4 months of legal maneuvering, background checks, and home visits. Patricia Gonzalez had been true to her word, watching closely, checking in regularly. But Hart had thrived. She'd gained weight, her nightmares had decreased, she'd started laughing again. The provisional custody had become permanent guardianship 3 weeks ago. Guillermo Guam was now, in the eyes of the law, responsible for Hart Miller until she turned 18. He'd celebrated by taking her to the bookstore and telling her she could pick out anything she wanted. She'd chosen 7 books and a journal with a lock.
Guillermo hadn't asked what she wrote in it.
Now, watching her chatter to Rosa about her presentation, Guillermo marvels at the strangeness of his life. 6 months ago, he'd been alone by choice, trusting no one, vulnerable to nothing. Now his calendar includes parent-teacher conferences and doctor's appointments and a recurring alarm that reminds him when it's time to read the bedtime story.
His organization has adapted.
The men know that certain hours are untouchable. That Hart's safety supersedes all other priorities. That anyone who even looks at her wrong will answer to Guillermo personally. Viktor Volkov had tested that promise once, sending 2 men to surveil the building. They'd been intercepted by Felix's team and delivered back to Volkov with a message carved into their flesh: touch her and die.
Volkov had gone quiet after that.
Not disappeared. Men like Viktor never truly disappear, but quiet.
Calculating his next move.
Guillermo knew the threat wasn't gone, just dormant. He'd reinforced security, diversified his interests, and made it clear throughout the underworld that Hart Miller was under his protection. It had earned him a reputation for sentimentality, which some saw as weakness. But those who knew Guillermo understood the truth. A man with something to protect is more dangerous than a man with nothing to lose. Mr. Guillermo.
Hart's voice pulls him from his thoughts.
You're doing the thinking face. The thinking face?
Guillermo asks, amused.
The one where your eyebrows go down and you look scary. But you're not actually scary, you're just concentrating. Rosa laughs. She has you figured out, Mr. Guam. Apparently, Guillermo says.
He finishes his coffee and stands.
I need to handle some calls before we leave for your presentation. But I'll be ready at 1:30, okay?
Okay, Hart says.
Then, more quietly, thank you for coming. I know you're busy.
Guillermo crosses to her, crouching so they are eye level.
Hart, listen to me. You are never an interruption.
You're the priority. Always.
Understand. Hart nods, her eyes suddenly bright with emotion. She throws her arms around his neck, hugging him fiercely. Guillermo hugs her back, careful and sure, the way he's learned to be with her. I love you, Hart whispers. The words hit like a physical blow.
Hart has never said them before.
Guillermo had wondered if she would, if she could. Wondered if allowing herself to love again felt like a betrayal of her mother. He closes his eyes, holding this child who chose him on a sidewalk 6 months ago. I love you too, Hart. When she pulls back, she's smiling through tears.
Mommy would like you, I think.
She always said the best people are the ones who are kind even when it's hard. Guillermo thinks about all the things he's done, all the darkness in his past. He thinks about the blood on his hands, the orders he's given, the men he's destroyed. And then he thinks about a little girl with a worn book, asking him to make the words sound right.
I hope she would, he says quietly.
The presentation. The tutoring center is an upscale facility in a renovated brownstone, catering to children of executives, diplomats, and people who prefer private education. Hart has been attending for 4 months, catching up on the schooling she missed during the chaotic weeks after her mother's death. Guillermo arrives exactly at 1:30, flanked by Marco and another bodyguard named Tony. They are dressed in suits, professional and alert, drawing curious glances from the other parents in the lobby. Miss Jennifer, Hart's primary tutor, greets him warmly. She's a young woman in her 30s with infinite patience and a genuine love for teaching.
Mr. Guam, so glad you could make it.
Hart's been looking forward to this all week.
Wouldn't miss it, Guillermo says.
The presentation room is small, set up with chairs facing a makeshift stage. A dozen other children are presenting today, along with their parents or guardians. Guillermo takes a seat in the front row, Marco and Tony positioning themselves discreetly near the exits.
Hart is third to present.
When her name is called, she walks to the front with her poster board and a stack of note cards. She looks tiny up there, dwarfed by the space, but her voice is clear and steady. My project is about Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, Hart begins. This was my mummy's favorite book. We read it together every night until she died 6 months ago.
A hush falls over the room.
This kind of raw honesty isn't common in children's presentations.
Parents shift uncomfortably.
But Hart continues, unflinching. The book is about a pig named Wilbur and a spider named Charlotte. Charlotte saves Wilbur's life by writing words in her web. She makes people see that Wilbur is special, that he's worth saving. Hart holds up her poster, covered in drawings and quotes. Charlotte teaches us that love means doing hard things to help the people we care about. Even when it hurts. Even when it costs us something. She looks directly at Guillermo. My mommy loved me like that. She worked so hard to take care of me. And even though she's gone, her love is still here. Like Charlotte's web, even after Charlotte dies.
Hart's voice wavers slightly.
After Mommy died,
I was alone and scared. But then I met someone who reminded me of Charlotte. Someone who chose to help even though he didn't have to.
Someone who made me feel safe again.
Guillermo's throat tightens.
So my project is about how love doesn't end when someone dies, Hart says.
It gets passed on.
Other people pick it up and carry it forward.
That's what makes us human.
That's what makes life worth living, even when it's sad.
She sets down her poster and picks up a piece of paper. I wrote a short story for my project.
It's called The Spider and the Wolf. It's about a wolf who everyone thinks is mean, but really is just lonely. And a little spider teaches him that being loved means letting people see who you really are.
Hart reads her story.
It's surprisingly sophisticated for a 7-year-old, full of emotion and insight. The wolf in her story protects the spider from dangers in the forest.
The spider teaches the wolf to be gentle.
In the end, they become family. When she finishes, the room erupts in applause. Guillermo stands, clapping hardest of all. Hart's face lights up, and she runs off the stage directly to him. He catches her, lifting her up.
That was incredible, he says. I'm so proud of you.
Did you like the wolf?
Hart asks. I made him like you.
Strong and scary on the outside but good on the inside. Guillermo laughs, a genuine sound that draws surprised looks from the other parents.
I loved him, he says. And I loved the spider.
Brave and wise, just like you. After the presentations, parents and children mingle over refreshments. Guillermo stands slightly apart, Hart at his side, Marco and Tony creating an unobtrusive perimeter. A woman approaches, expensive clothes, confident bearing, the mother of one of the other students. Mr. Guam, I'm Rebecca Winston.
My daughter Emma is in Hart's class.
Nice to meet you, Guillermo says politely. Rebecca smiles, but there's calculation in her eyes. I have to say, Hart's presentation was quite moving. Such a difficult topic to handle with grace.
She's a remarkable child, Guillermo says.
And you're her.
Rebecca trails off delicately. Guardian, Guillermo supplies.
Legally adopted as of 3 weeks ago. How wonderful, Rebecca says, though her tone suggests she's fishing for more information. And what do you do, Mr. Guam?
I'm in logistics, Guillermo says smoothly. Import-export.
Quite boring, really.
I'm sure, Rebecca says. Her gaze flicks to Marco and Tony.
You seem to have quite the security detail for logistics work. Guillermo's expression doesn't change, but his voice drops to that dangerous register that makes Marco tense. My work sometimes requires security, and now that I have Hart, I take no chances with her safety. The message is clear, don't ask questions you don't want answered. Rebecca gets it. She excuses herself quickly, and Guillermo watches her go.
She was nosy, Hart observes.
Some people are, Guillermo agrees.
It's not always malicious.
Sometimes people are just curious. Do you think they know?
Hart asks quietly.
About your real work.
Guillermo looks down at her, surprised. They've never directly discussed what he does.
He's been careful, shielding her from the darker aspects of his life. What do you think I do? He asks carefully.
Hart considers this. I think you help people but in ways that aren't always allowed.
I think you're important and powerful, and that scares some people.
But you're not bad, Mr. Guillermo.
Bad people don't read bedtime stories or cry during the sad parts.
Guillermo's breath catches.
I cried.
Your voice got funny when Charlotte died, Hart says. It's okay. I cried too.
It's supposed to make you cry. Guillermo realizes this child sees him more clearly than anyone ever has. She knows, on some level, that his hands aren't clean. But she also knows what matters, that those same hands hold her gently, turn pages carefully, braid her hair with patient concentration.
I'm not a good man, Hart,
Guillermo says quietly.
But I'm trying to be a good guardian.
Does that make sense?
Heart nods. Mommy used to say people aren't all good or all bad. They are just people, trying their best. And sometimes their best is enough.
Your mother was very wise, Guillermo says.
She was, Heart agrees. Then she takes his hand. Can we go home now?
I want to show Rosa my certificate.
Let's go home, Guillermo says.
3 days later, on the morning of Heart's 8th birthday, everything changes.
Guillermo wakes at 6 a.m. to his phone buzzing urgently.
It's Felix, which immediately sets off alarms. Felix knows not to call this early unless it's critical. Talk, Guillermo says, already moving toward his closet. Volkov made his move, Felix says grimly.
He hit 3 of our warehouses overnight.
Set fire to 2, cleaned out the 3rd. He's declaring war, boss.
Guillermo's blood runs cold.
Casualties. 2 guards injured, 1 critical.
No deaths yet. But boss, that's not all. We intercepted chatter.
Volkov's telling people this is about the girl.
That you're distracted, vulnerable.
He's using Heart to justify the attack.
Guillermo's vision narrows to a pinpoint.
Where is he?
Underground. We're looking, but he's gone to ground.
He knew we'd retaliate.
Find him, Guillermo orders.
And triple security here. No one in or out without my authorization. He ends the call and stands in the dark of his bedroom, mind racing.
Volkov has finally made his play.
And he's right. Guillermo has been distracted, focused on building a life with Heart instead of maintaining the iron grip on his territory that kept rivals at bay. But if Volkov thinks that makes him weak, he's made a fatal miscalculation. A soft knock on the door. Rosa's voice, worried. Mr. Guam? Is everything okay? Guillermo opens the door.
Lock down the penthouse. No one leaves today.
Tell Heart. He stops.
Today is her birthday.
He'd planned a small party, just Rosa and Felix and a few gifts.
A cake.
A celebration. Tell her we're having a home birthday, Guillermo says. Make it special. I need to handle some work, but I'll be done by this afternoon. Rosa nods, understanding more than he says. Be careful. Guillermo spends the next 6 hours in his study, coordinating a response. It's brutal, efficient, and calculated to send a message. By noon, 2 of Volkov's safe houses have been raided. By 2 p.m., Volkov's supply chain has been cut off at 3 critical points. By 4 p.m., Viktor Volkov is receiving reports that his organization is hemorrhaging money and territory.
But Guillermo wants more. He wants Volkov himself.
Boss, we found him, Mateo says, bursting into the study at 4:30.
His holdup in a warehouse in Red Hook.
Minimal guard, he thinks is hidden. He's wrong, Guillermo says coldly. He stands, reaching for the jacket draped over his chair.
Then he pauses.
Through the closed door, he can hear Rosa singing happy birthday in Spanish.
Can hear Heart laughing. He'd promised to be done by afternoon.
It's 4:30, and he's about to go do something that could get him killed. Guillermo opens the door. Heart is sitting at the kitchen island, a small cake in front of her with 8 candles. She's wearing a party dress Rosa bought, her hair in the braids she's so proud of learning to do herself.
She sees him and her face lights up. Mr. Guillermo.
Come sing with us.
Guillermo looks at Mateo.
Give me 15 minutes. Boss, if we wait. 15 minutes, Guillermo repeats, leaving no room for argument. He walks to the kitchen, forcing himself to smile. Happy birthday, Pequena.
Heart beams.
Rosa leads the singing, and Guillermo joins in, his deep voice blending with Rosa's melodic tones. Heart closes her eyes, makes a wish, and blows out the candles in one breath. What did you wish for?
Rosa asks. Can't tell or it won't come true, Heart says.
But she looks at Guillermo with such obvious affection that he knows the wish involved him. Present time, Rosa announces, pulling out a wrapped box. Actually, Guillermo says, I have something for you first. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small velvet box.
Heart's eyes widen.
She opens it carefully, revealing a delicate silver bracelet. It's engraved with words in elegant script, some friend.
Terrific.
Humble. Charlotte's words for Wilbur, Heart breathes. So you always remember, Guillermo says quietly.
That you're terrific. That you're humble. That you're some friend.
To me, you're all of those things, Heart. Heart launches herself at him, hugging him with all her strength. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Guillermo holds her, memoizing this moment. Then he gently pulls back. I have to go take care of some work.
But I'll be back tonight, and we'll have a proper celebration. Pizza, movies, whatever you want. You promise?
Hart asks. Guillermo thinks about the warehouse in Red Hook.
About Viktor Volkov and the violence about to unfold. About the possibility that this could go wrong. I promise, he says anyway. Because the alternative, saying goodbye in a way that suggests he might not come back, is unthinkable. He kisses the top of her head, something he's started doing in the past month, and stands. Rosa, you know what to do if.
I know, Rosa says firmly. Go.
We'll be fine. Guillermo leaves his daughter, because that's what she is now, in every way that matters, eating birthday cake in his kitchen, and goes to handle the man who dared threaten her. The warehouse is exactly where Matteo said it would be, a dilapidated structure on the edge of the waterfront. Guillermo arrives with 12 men, armed and ready. They move like shadows, surrounding the building, cutting off escape routes. Felix is at Guillermo's side, weapon drawn. On your word, boss. Guillermo thinks about Hart asking him to promise he'd be back. About the bracelet on her wrist and the trust in her eyes. Take Volkov alive if possible, Guillermo orders. I want him to understand what happens when you threaten family. They breach the warehouse in synchronized precision. Volkov's guards are outnumbered and outgunned. The fight is brief, brutal, and decisive. 3 of Volkov's men go down. The rest surrender. Viktor Volkov himself is found in a back office, reaching for a weapon. Marco tackles him before he can fire, and 2 more men drag him to his knees in front of Guillermo. Volkov is in his 40s, built like a bull, with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. He glares at Guillermo with pure hatred. You should have stayed in your lane, Guam. Sentimental fool. Guillermo crouches down, bringing himself to Volkov's level. You made 3 mistakes, Victor. First, you underestimated how far I'm willing to go to protect what's mine. Second, you attacked my warehouses thinking I'd be too distracted to retaliate effectively. Third, and most important, you threatened a child. She's your weakness, Volkov spits. Everyone knows it. The great Guillermo Guam, brought low by a little girl with sad eyes. She's my strength, Guillermo corrects quietly. She's the reason I'm building instead of just destroying. The reason I'm thinking long-term instead of just surviving day to day. And you, Victor, just gave me the perfect opportunity to demonstrate what happens when someone targets my family.
Guillermo stands.
You're finished in this city. Your organization is dissolved as of tonight. Your territories are being absorbed by my people as we speak.
Your assets are frozen. Your suppliers are cutting ties.
By tomorrow morning, Viktor Volkov will be nothing but a cautionary tale. You can't, Volkov starts. I can and I have, Guillermo interrupts. You wanted to test me? You wanted to see if having Hart made me soft? Here's your answer. I'm more dangerous now than I ever was before. Because now I have something worth protecting. And I will burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt her.
He signals to Felix.
Make sure Mr. Volkov understands his retirement is permanent. I don't care how you do it, but he never operates in my city again.
Clear.
Crystal, boss, Felix says with a cold smile. Guillermo walks out of the warehouse, leaving Volkov's fate in Felix's capable hands. He won't kill him. That would be too quick, too merciful. Volkov will live, but he'll spend the rest of his life knowing that Guillermo Guam destroyed him for threatening an 8-year-old girl. The message will spread through the underworld like wildfire. Hart Miller is untouchable. By the time Guillermo reaches his car, his phone is ringing. It's Rosa. Mr. Guam, she says, and he can hear the smile in her voice. Hart wants to know if you like pepperoni or sausage on your pizza. Guillermo closes his eyes, letting the violence of the past hour drain away. Tell her pepperoni. And Rosa? I'm on my way home. We'll be waiting, Rosa says. Guillermo arrives back at the penthouse at 8 p.m. His suit is rumpled but clean. He changed at a safe house before coming home. Hart doesn't need to see blood on his clothes, doesn't need to know the details of what he does in the dark. She's in her pajamas when he walks in, curled up on the sofa with Charlotte's Web. The bracelet glints on her wrist as she turns pages. You're back. Hart exclaims, jumping up. I knew you would be. I told Rosa you always keep your promises. Always, Guillermo agrees. He crosses to her, kneeling so they are eye level. I'm sorry I had to leave on your birthday. The work couldn't wait.
It's okay, Hart says.
Rosa said sometimes grown-ups have to do important things. But you're here now, and Rosa ordered pizza, and we can still have movie night. What movie?
Guillermo asks. Charlotte's Web, Hart says.
The animated one from 1973.
I found it online. I thought maybe we could watch it together. If you want. Guillermo realizes what she's asking.
This book has been their connection, their nightly ritual. She's offering to share it in a new way, to add another layer to their relationship.
I'd love that, Guillermo says.
They settle on the sofa, Hart tucked against his side, Rosa in the armchair with her knitting, Marco stationed discreetly near the elevator. The pizza arrives, and they eat while watching a cartoon spider teach a pig about friendship and sacrifice. When Charlotte dies in the movie, Hart cries. Guillermo feels his own throat tighten. He's seen this child cry many times over the past 6 months, for her mother, from nightmares, from the overwhelming weight of grief.
But these tears are different. Cathartic. Healing. She didn't really die, Hart says, wiping her eyes. Part of her lived on in her children. And in Wilbur's memory. That's what Mommy's like. She lives on in me. In the things she taught me. In the love she gave me.
And you pass that love forward, Guillermo says quietly. The way you did when you asked me to read to you that night. You could have given up, Hart. You could have stopped trusting people. But you didn't. You handed me a book and asked for help. And that changed everything.
Hart looks up at him.
Did it really? Change everything?
Yes, Guillermo says simply. Before you, I had power but no purpose. Money but no meaning.
I was successful, but I was alone. You gave me something to build for. Someone to be better for.
I didn't do anything special, Hart says.
I was just sad and you were there.
You saw me, Guillermo corrects.
The real me.
And you didn't run away.
That's the most special thing anyone's ever done.
Hart snuggles closer. Can I tell you my birthday wish now?
Since it already came true.
Tell me, Guillermo says. I wish that you'd be happy, Hart says.
Really happy, not just okay. Because you look sad sometimes, like you're carrying heavy things.
And I want you to feel light.
The way Mommy made me feel light.
Guillermo closes his eyes against the sudden burning behind them.
This child, this impossibly empathetic little girl, spent her birthday wish on him. I am happy, Hart, he says, his voice rough. Happier than I've been in longer than I can remember. You did that.
We did that,
Hart corrects, echoing his words back to him. Together. As the movie ends and Hart's eyes start to droop, Guillermo carries her to her room. He tucks her into bed, making sure Mr. Buttons is within reach, making sure the nightlight is on. Will you read to me?
Hart asks sleepily. Just a little bit.
Guillermo picks up Charlotte's Web from her nightstand. They've read it cover to cover 3 times now, but it never gets old. He opens to a random page and reads. Why did you do all this for me?
Wilbur asked. I don't deserve it. I've never done anything for you.
You have been my friend, replied Charlotte. That in itself is a tremendous thing. Hart's breathing evens out, sleep claiming her. But Guillermo continues reading, speaking to the darkness, to the universe, to the mother who can't be here. I'll take care of her, Sarah, he says quietly.
I'll make sure she knows she's loved. I'll read to her every night. I'll keep her safe. I'll give her the life you wanted for her.
He closes the book and sits in the chair by Hart's bed, watching her sleep. Outside, New York pulses with life. Down in the streets, his organization is securing territory, following through on the orders he gave tonight.
Viktor Volkov's empire is crumbling.
The message is spreading, don't touch what's Guillermo Guam's. But up here, in this room painted lavender, none of that matters. Here, there's just a man who was asked to read a story, who said yes, and who found himself transformed by the simple act of caring for someone else. Rosa appears in the doorway, a cup of coffee in her hand. She hands it to Guillermo wordlessly, then looks at Hart. She's gotten taller, Rosa observes quietly. Stronger. The grief is still there, but it's not consuming her anymore. She's remarkable, Guillermo says.
So are you, Rosa says.
I didn't think you had this in you, Mr. Guam.
But you've been a good father to her.
Guardian, Guillermo corrects automatically.
Rosa gives him a knowing look. Father, she repeats firmly. That's what you are. That's what she needs you to be.
Don't diminish it. After Rosa leaves, Guillermo sits in the quiet, sipping his coffee, watching Hart sleep.
He thinks about the man he was 6 months ago. Cold. Isolated. Successful but empty. He thinks about the man he's becoming. Still dangerous, still powerful, but with something worth protecting. Someone who makes him want to be better. His phone buzzes.
A text from Felix. Volkov situation handled.
City is locked down. You're clear.
Guillermo types back. Good. I'm taking tomorrow off.
Family day.
Felix's response is immediate. Understood, boss. Guillermo sets the phone aside and leans back in the chair, closing his eyes. Tomorrow, he'll take Hart to the bookstore, let her pick out more books. They'll go to the park, maybe get ice cream. Just a normal day, the kind Hart's mother would have given her if she'd lived. It's not enough. It will never be enough to replace what Hart lost. But it's something. It's love and consistency and the promise that she'll never be alone again. And sometimes, Guillermo is learning, that's exactly enough. Hart Miller is 13 years old when she walks into the study where Guillermo is reviewing quarterly reports. She's taller now, no longer a little girl but a young woman in the making, with her mother's hazel eyes and a confidence built on 5 years of unconditional love. Dad, she says. She started calling him that 2 years ago, tentatively at first, then with growing certainty. I need to talk to you about something.
Guillermo looks up, immediately attentive.
What's wrong?
Nothing's wrong, Hart says, sitting in the chair across from his desk.
I've been thinking
about what I want to do with my life.
You're 13, Guillermo says with a slight smile. You have time to figure that out.
I know, Hart says.
But I've been thinking about Mommy. About how she worked so hard but never had enough.
About Mrs. Chen, who wanted to help but couldn't. About all the kids out there who need someone and don't have anyone.
Guillermo's expression shifts, understanding dawning. Hart. I want to start a foundation, Hart interrupts, her voice steady and sure.
In Mommy's name. The Sarah Miller Foundation. To help single mothers and kids who lose their parents.
To make sure they don't slip through the cracks the way we almost did. Guillermo stares at his daughter, this extraordinary young woman who has taken tragedy and transmuted it into purpose. I have money from the trust you set up, Hart continues. And I know you have connections.
Resources.
I'm not asking you to fund it, I want to do this myself, earn it, but I need your help to set it up. To make it real.
Guillermo is quiet for a long moment.
Then he says, your mother would be incredibly proud of you.
I hope so, Hart says softly. I want to honor her. And I want to help people the way you helped me. You saved my life, Dad.
Let me use that life to save others.
Guillermo comes around the desk and pulls Hart into a hug.
She's almost as tall as his shoulder now, growing so fast it terrifies him. We'll start tomorrow, he says.
I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork.
We'll make it legitimate, transparent, exactly what you envision.
And Hart. Yeah. I'll match whatever you put in. Dollar for dollar.
Your mother deserves that memorial, and you deserve the resources to make it happen.
Hart pulls back, eyes shining. Thank you. For everything. For reading to me that night. For not sending me away. For being my dad.
Thank you for asking me to, Guillermo says.
For seeing something in me worth trusting.
You changed my life, Hart. More than you'll ever know. That night, as has become ritual, they sit together in the living room. Hart is too old for lap-sitting now, but she still curls up next to Guillermo on the sofa, his arm around her shoulders. Read to me, she asks, handing him a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, the same one she carried that November night 5 years ago. Which chapter?
Guillermo asks, though he knows the answer. The last one, Hart says.
I want to hear the ending.
Guillermo opens to the final chapter.
He's read this book hundreds of times now, but it still moves him. Still reminds him of a cold sidewalk and a desperate child and a decision that changed everything. Charlotte was both a true friend and a good writer, he reads. Wilbur never forgot her. Although he loved her children and grandchildren dearly, none of the new spiders ever quite took her place in his heart.
She was in a class by herself.
It is not often that someone comes along who is a true friend and a good writer.
Charlotte was both. Hart wipes her eyes.
Mommy was both too. A true friend and a good person. The best, Guillermo agrees. And so are you, Hart says, looking up at him.
You're my Charlotte, Dad.
The one who saved me with words and love and by just being there when I needed someone.
Guillermo closes the book and sets it aside.
He looks at Hart, this girl who walked into his life with a worn paperback and a simple request, who saw past the monster to the man underneath, who gave him a reason to be better.
I'm the lucky one, Hart, he says quietly. You asked me to make the words sound right. But you made everything else right. My whole life.
You fixed things I didn't even know were broken.
Hart leans her head against his shoulder.
We fixed each other. Outside the penthouse windows, New York City glitters with possibility.
In 5 years, Hart will go to college.
In 10, she'll run the Sarah Miller Foundation full-time, helping thousands of children who need someone to see them, to choose them, to make them feel safe. In 20 years, she'll stand at Guillermo's side as he retires from the business, leaving behind the darkness for a quieter life focused on the family they've built, because there will be more. Rosa, Felix, Marco, all of them part of the strange, beautiful constellation that formed around a little girl and the man who read to her. But tonight, in this moment, there is simply a father and daughter sitting together in comfortable silence. The book that brought them together rests on the coffee table, its pages soft from years of turning, its margins still marked with Sarah Miller's handwriting. Hart looks at those notes sometimes, traces her mother's words with gentle fingers. Hart laughed here. Read this part twice. She loves it. Evidence of a love that survived death, that passed from one guardian to another, that multiplied instead of diminished.
Dad. Hart says sleepily.
Will you promise me something?
Anything,
Guillermo says. When I have kids someday, will you teach them about Charlotte's Web? Will you tell them the story of how a book brought us together?
Guillermo's throat tightens.
The idea of Hart grown, with children of her own, with a full life spreading out before her, it's almost too much hope for a man who once had none.
I promise, he says. And Hart? I'll tell them about your mother too. About how much she loved you.
About how her love lives on in you, in the foundation, in every child you help. They'll know her story. They'll know where you came from.
Good, Hart whispers, her eyes drifting closed. That's all I needed to hear.
She falls asleep there on the sofa, tucked against Guillermo's side. He sits with her for a long time, watching the city lights, thinking about impossible things. A mafia boss who learned to braid hair. A penthouse that became a home. A fortress that opened its gates for a 7-year-old with enormous eyes and an even bigger heart. And a book, worn, loved, carried through grief and loss, that somehow found its way into exactly the right hands on exactly the right night.
Please read to me, sir. Mommy can't anymore.
5 words that changed 2 lives forever. Guillermo looks down at Hart, peaceful in sleep, the silver bracelet on her wrist catching the light.
Some friend. Terrific. Humble.
Thank you, Sarah. Guillermo whispers to the mother who will never know what her daughter became. Thank you for raising her to be brave.
To ask for help. To see the good in people. I'll take care of her.
I promise. For as long as she needs me.
The city doesn't answer.
But somewhere, in the space between heartbeats and prayers, Guillermo feels something like peace. He gathers Hart in his arms and carries her to bed, the way he has 1,000 times before.
Tucks her in with Mr. Buttons. Kisses her forehead.
Whispers, "Good night, Paquina. I love you." And then Guillermo Guam, criminal, guardian, father, walks back to his study to plan tomorrow.
A trip to the bookstore.
Lunch at Hart's favorite restaurant. Maybe a walk through Central Park, where they'll feed the ducks and talk about the foundation and dream about all the lives they'll change together.
Ordinary things. Beautiful things. The kind of day a little girl deserves.
The kind of life a mother would have wanted for her daughter. And the kind of redemption a man never knew he needed until a child handed him a book and asked him to make the words sound right. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up.
Just click and check them out.
And don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.